Hello, I'm Cheryl Frank from Brighton Green. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our Investing According to Your Values seminar with our special guest, Michael from Rivers and Mountains GreenFaith. I am recording this so that people can watch it later, and I'll let Michael go ahead and introduce yourself and get started.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. We're going to be rather fast-paced here this evening because we have quite a bit of material to cover. I'm going to be working this evening from one web page. So if you look in your chat, you'll see a link. You don't need to open that link because we're going to do a shared screen tonight. But the idea here is for me to introduce you to this web page so that later on you can go back to the web page and do your own research, or you can show your friends and neighbors how to access this. So you'll see in the chat there a link to Rivers, Mountains, GreenFaith. So that's Rivers Mountains GreenFaiths. Here, somebody said to post it again. Here we go. There we are. Everyone see it. There you go. And then also I'm going to type in here my contact information. And you are very welcome to call me with questions or observations that you might have after this workshop. Just on Sunday, I spent about 15 minutes with a young college student in Grand Junction, Colorado, researching auto insurance options. So no question is too small. So let me share my screen and I'll tell you a little bit about Rivers and Mountains GreenFaith and what we're doing here. So you can all see my screen now, right? Now I'm going to move away from looking at your screen.
I want to get the information.
Okay, so everyone can see the screen here. Now, I'm not really able to see all of your pictures or read chat while we're going through this. And certainly there are people in the audience. So what I invite you to do is just unmute yourself, or if you're in the audience there, to say something, just to ask the question as we go. As we go through each section, I'll stop for a few minutes. We'll come off of the share screen and ask some questions. But if something comes up that you want to ask, just go ahead and come off mute and ask the question. So let's get going with the workshop. Here is our website, rivers-mountains-greenfaith.org. Rivers and Mountains GreenFaith is a multi-faith climate and environmental action group. We are based mostly in the mid and upper Hudson Valley, so we go as far south as the Kingston, New Paltz area, and as far north as Glens Falls, which is north of Albany. And we go from the Eastern Catskills, which you're looking at here in the picture, all the way over and into the Western Berkshires. We're in coalition with GreenFaith National, as well as Stop the Money Pipeline and Third Act. You can scroll down here and read a little bit more about who we are and some of our issues that we focus on. But we want to direct you to this top of the page here on the menus, and we're going to go over here to individual divestment. But allow me to pause for just 1 minute, because I know out in Rochester next Tuesday, you two are doing the 3/21/23 day of action, calling on 4 major Wall Street banks to stop funding new fossil fuel projects. So here's our website as we are organizing. We're the lead organizer for the day of action in downtown Albany on noon. And you can take some time to scroll through this. We have 35 co-sponsors. These are all active co-sponsors. So we're expecting a fairly good turnout on Tuesday. And we have a weather forecast that looks pretty good for the day. So let's go over to individual divestment. This is merely a landing page. So it's go to workshop is where we're going to go. But this is our calendar as we go forward throughout the year. This is 2023. And we like to keep around, just for historical record, the workshops that we did back in 2022. So you'll see here we are on March 16th in Brighton, New York. So up here, we're going to click on Go to Workshop in a moment. But allow me to start speaking about what we have here. If you read Align Your Money with Your Values, this is a workshop for individuals and organizations on how to move finances from funding fossil fuel extraction, production, and distribution. And of course, we want to look at how we're going to direct our bank deposits, insurance premiums, and investment portfolios in the future to doing things that more align with our values, such as small businesses and renewable clean energy. So the point I want to make right here is this aspect of move finances from funding fossil fuel extraction, etc. And the point is, I don't ever remember investing in fossil fuel. So how is it now that I have to like move my money? How did I unwittingly got involved in funding fossil fuel projects? So as we go here and we look at the workshop, what we want to do is look at what's happened with our banking, our credit cards, our home and auto insurance, and also our investments, and how our money or our spending is being used to fund the fossil fuel industry. So when we look at banking right up at the beginning here, most of us use a bank. And the reason we use our banks is because we want to have a certain amount of convenience and security. Certainly nothing could be more convenient than having a shoebox of money in my closet, but that's not too secure. So I go to the bank and I deposit my money, and I don't ask anything of them other than convenience, which they give me with a debit card and a checking account. And the security is certainly there, including insuring my deposits up to $250,000. So let me tell a little story here, make-up story. Imagine that Mr. Peabody, now Mr. Peabody owns a big coal company. And Mr. Peabody comes to me one day and says, "Hey, Michael, I got this mountaintop down in Pennsylvania that I want to take the top off of to get to some coal. And I don't want to tie up all my working capital, so I want to give me some money. Give me some money for this project." And I say, "Oh, Mr. Peabody, I don't think so. That just doesn't sound like it aligns with my values." Mr. Peabody looks at me in a kind way and says, "That's okay." He walks down the street to my bank, goes into the bank, says, "Hey, I got this mountaintop down in Pennsylvania that I want to take the top off of to get to some coal. Loan me some of Michael's money." And my banker says, "Sure, no problem." They draw up some papers. There's going to be some interest paid. And now my deposits, my money is going to be used unwittingly to do something that I would rather it doesn't do. Now, that's not really a distorted story. That's exactly what is happening if you have your money in a major bank that is giving loans to the fossil fuel industry. Now, I think most of you are in this workshop because you want to learn how to avoid that and how you can find some good alternatives. So if you want to read more or give some references to some of your friends, colleagues, relatives, I suggest you go over and read from Green America, Get a Better Bank. And this has a pretty good explanation of what's happening with money from big banks being used to fund not just fossil fuels, but sweatshops, factory farms, and other destructive industries. Also, you can come here to the middle of this page and you can see Stop the Money Pipeline has climate-friendly banks, and you can look up the Global Alliance and read a little bit more about what's going on. So read all about it. But what we want to do is we want to come over here and use this tool. We're going to use Mighty Deposits. You could also use Bank Green, Bank for Good, but we like Mighty Deposits. And here's what we're trying to do. I could say in a very simple way that if you want to avoid doing harm, let's call it, putting your money into an industry that is leading to climate destruction, You want to move your money away from that. All you have to do is leave the big banks and go to the smaller banks. That's easy done. So you've gone from doing harm to doing no harm. But let's look at doing some impact banking where we're actually going to do good. Now, getting ahead of myself here a little bit, if we were talking about investments in your retirement funds, when you go to establish a portfolio, whether you're investing directly in stocks of a company or through mutuals or exchange traded funds, you have a very specific contract. It's not like the banks where you make a deposit and the bank can now loan out your money as they wish. Well, certain restrictions from federal and state government, but it's mostly they can loan out to anybody who's a reliable business. So with your investments, you're being very specific. You can direct exactly where your money's going. So how do you do this with banking? You've got to find a bank that is doing things that you want to see done. So let's go take a look at this. We're here on the front page, personal banking. Come over here to Mighty Deposits, search, and click. This is a rather basic website, not a lot of glamour. And you'll see across here where find banks, find credit unions. Mighty Deposits is a guide that was put together by a women's collaborative. You can see down here where their data comes from. It's publicly available data. It's not proprietary. So this is data that's being fed in on a regular basis from various regulatory agencies and at the state and federal level. So take a quick read if you want to look at its viability. So what we want to do here is find banks, find credit unions. We're going to look at both. I like to promote credit unions. The reason for that is if we're moving our money from the big Wall Street banks, from doing, as we say, the harm to no harm, we want to get as close to local as possible. And certainly credit unions are one way to do that relatively easily. And also credit unions, as you may know, the depositors own the credit union. So it's not a publicly traded bank, nor is it a privately held bank. But let's look at the find banks first. So what you see here is I want a bank located in anywhere USA that is anything. Now, that's just a global search. So we could come down here and just click right away on a particular bank, which we're going to do in a moment. But let's take a look at what this anything is. If you click here, you can actually refine your search to finding banks that are above average in small business lending, or find a bank that is above average in small farm lending, or maybe you want to find a Black-owned bank, or you want to find a bank that is investing in low-income communities. We're going to call these the good guy buttons. So here's where we're going. You don't know if your bank is doing good unless you ask, unless you do your research. So again, going from doing harm to no harm to doing good, how do you know? You have to do this type of research. We're going to leave it at anything for right now. I want to show you how this tool works, and we're going to pick on Bank of America for today. Sometimes we pick on Chase, sometimes we pick on Citi. Let's pick on Bank of America, the main bank in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we click on Go. And what we find here, first of all, is this button over here that says Top Funder of Fossil Fuels. If you are doing your research and you don't see this button lit up, that does not mean that they are not funding fossil fuel projects. It just means they're not a top funder. So you could find KeyBank won't have a button lit up there. M&T Bank won't have a button lit up there. In fact, both of those banks are regional community banks. They're not major funders of fossil fuels. In fact, they only have a couple of projects that they've ever done. But here, what we look at is that $25 of community investments for every $100 in deposit. Go back to what I'm saying here about your money going from doing harm to no harm to doing good. If I want to see my deposits being used in my community for the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, I want to see more than $25 of my deposit of $100 going towards those type of industries and investments, those type of loans. But what we see here is a Wall Street bank. All of the Wall Street banks exist for the purposes of providing very complex financial services to Wall Street companies. They're not really there to meet our banking needs. They do, but they're designed to do business with the big companies. And so I don't expect $25. Actually, I would expect $0 going into the community, because their purpose is not to go into the community, it's to support major corporations. We can go over here and click on the See More Data button. It's loading up. And you'll see here that it is below industry average on all of those good guy buttons that we were talking about. So let's go back here a moment. And does somebody want to come off mute and tell me about a bank out by Rochester that you'd like to take a look at?
Sure, I will. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Chase JP Morgan.
Right, that's going to be another Wall Street bank. So we're going to see much the same as what we just saw there. All you have to do is type in the Chase. And you'll see here, we're going to go to the main bank in Columbus. And we'll hit the go button here. And you'll see much the same thing. You get the top funder of fossil fuels, not much money going into the community. And again, we don't expect to see much money going into the community because they're a Wall Street bank. And if you click on the more data, you'll see much the same as you did before, that very, very little is going back into your community. Instead, your deposits are being used to underwrite loans that are going to major Wall Street companies. This is taking a long time to download.
Michael, we have a couple local banks. One is called ESL and the other one is Canandaigua National Bank.
Okay, give me one of those two again. I was getting some back feed there.
Okay.
One of the two? Yep.
Canandaigua, CANANDAIGUA. There you go. Yeah, Canandaigua National.
Okay, so you'll see it'll pop up for you fairly easily. Let me just, if somebody wanted me to type in M&T Bank, we wouldn't find it. Sometimes you have to do your research and you would have to type in manufacturers and traders to be found. But Canandaigua, it popped up. Here we go. Here we go. Now here you're going to see what really goes on with a community bank. Let me divide this into three parts. We have the big Wall Street banks, and then you have the community banks. In community banks, you may have a regional community bank. Think like Key Bank would be a very large regional bank. In fact, it's almost national because they have branches in Washington State as well as Ohio and New York and several other states. But some of you may be familiar with Community Bank. It's actually called Community Bank out of Syracuse. Or there's some other regional community banks, and then there are your local community banks. Canandaigua is a local community bank, and look at this, 81 of the dollars out of 100 are going back into the community. That's 118% above industry average. And look at these good guy buttons over here. Let's take a little bit more of a look at them. They are above average in housing. They're way above average in households. They're also way above average in small business. Now they're low in large farms and small farms, and that simply might be because of the community. Now I know Canandaigua is an agricultural community. I know the region very well. So I'm kind of surprised that they're not doing a lot more farm loans and small business loans, but there might be another bank that's being more aggressive in that community. Now, when we're looking over here at this 81% or $81 out of the 100, we really like to look at somewhere around 60% to 80%. Anything below 60 means that too much of that money is going out of the community. Anything above 80 starts to make me think that maybe they're loaning too much money out, because we want to see some of this remaining amount down here, see the remaining 19%. It needs to go back into work securities and bank branches and derivatives and other finances, not directly to community use. That is just good, healthy diversification. We have a few moments here. Let's take another look at another bank.
Unions in this list?
Say again?
Are credit unions in this list?
Okay, what we have to do here, good. I'm glad you brought that up. See, up here at the top, find banks, you have to click on find credit unions. So if you're using this tool later on your own, and you're looking for a credit union under find banks, you go, oh, wait a minute, I have to go over here and click there. So give me the name of a credit union.
Okay,
Genesee Co-op Federal Credit Union.
Say
okay,
again.
she wants to look up Genesee Co-op. GENESEE. There it is. It's the third one down there.
The
Genesee
co-op
Co-op.
out of Rochester, okay. Named after the river. Okay, now here I'm surprised for a co-op, a credit union co-op, that $52. Now also, I want to point out something. When you look at the industry average for a bank is different than an industry average for a credit union. Credit unions, you expect to see much more money going into the community than you would with a bank. So being 9% below the industry average, if this was a bank, that would actually be just a few percentage above the industry average. But we do see a couple of good guy buttons over here, the low income communities and the housing. Let's go see how heavy they are there. And you can see here that they're not overly heavy, but they're doing a little bit above average in housing. But I would be curious about this credit union to ask them, and of course, as a depositor, you are an owner of the credit union, where are the deposits going if they're not going back into the community? Want to look at one more?
The other big one here is called Eastman Savings and Loan. Eastman, that's
Okay,
not it.
that's going to be a bank, is that right? If it's a savings, yeah.
It's a credit union. It's a credit union. It's ESL, but it might just be called ESL Federal Credit Union. There it is. It's right there. Yeah.
Okay. Whoa, this also, I would ask the question, why is this so? Again, with most credit unions, we see it up around $70 and $80 out of the 100, not 35. So I would be back there again saying, where are you sending my deposits? They're going outside of the community. Curious. You rarely see anything below $50. I'm surprised that the past two that you've offered up, both of them were below 50 or right around there. Let's come back a little bit later. So have fun looking around for your mighty deposits. Oh, I just left one thing out. We're back here on the site, right? And you can scroll down here, eco-friendly banks. Let's click there. Let's say that you're looking to find a bank that is not financing fossil fuels, that has a lot of good guy buttons. And since this is a fossil fuel free workshop, let's click on this button right here. Now, this is where they've already sorted out. And notice over here, there are 13 banks in the US, all the good guy buttons that they have listed up over here. Notably, a B corporation. You might want to take a little note to yourself when you get home to do some research on B-Corp. This is a vetting organization that ranks corporations and businesses based on their social, responsible business practices, including the environment. In our household, we use B Corp, like some people use Consumer Reports. So we look up B Corp for our laundry detergent, our linens, and many other things. But you can also look it up as far as your banks go. We're going to talk about B Corps a little bit later in investments. But you'll see here some banks. Some of these are New York City banks, but they're throughout the country. Spring Bank is seen by most as being the greenest bank in the country. Down here, you'll see Beneficial State Bank out on the West Coast. Many of us consider this to be the second greenest bank in the country. Down here, you'll see actually a bank that we have in our backyard, in our neighborhood, Berkshire Bank. But I'm just showing this to you so you can see some examples. Now, these are very highly rated banks, but look here, $46, $45, they too, $50, are low in the amount of money that's going back into the community, where many of us like to see these higher numbers in the 60s and the 70s. So have fun with this tool. Use it often. Take a look. If you have a relative that's moving to Wichita, you can click on the location and the type of bank you're looking for and do your research. But let's move on to the next part of the workshop, which is the credit cards. Now here it's much the same, that if you have credit cards with Chase, Citi, the other Wall Street banks, you're still in the game of moving money towards fossil fuel projects. Now it's no longer a deposit. It's no longer that they're using your money. What's going on here is that you are spending money and you're buying services that are making profits, very large profits, to these banks that are then turning around and doing what these banks do. So now they're going to be using their money. It once was your money, but it's now their money, and it's not giving loans, they're actually investing. So let's talk about the three types of money that get generated out of the use of a credit card. One is the annual fee. Now, hopefully most of us don't have cards anymore that have the annual fee. If you have American Express, you can't avoid it. They have annual fees, but annual fees are usually $60, $70, $80. And you can imagine that if you have a card with one of the major Wall Street banks and you're paying $60, well, that's not a lot of money, but imagine that they have 10 million of those cards out there. Every year, they're going to be generating that kind of money, literally $6 billion in that case. So there's a lot of money in the annual fee. Once the bank makes that money, they can use it as they wish to invest in what they wish. The second part of it is the user fees, those interest rates, and you know what they're like, 13 something, 18%. Now, hopefully, again, most of us are far beyond having credit card debt. I certainly had my share of it back when I was in college and first starting up with my first home. But fortunately, these days, that credit card debt has not been around for many, many years. But many people, millions of them, have credit card debt. And if you were to do the math of what they're paying in the aggregate, it is trillions of dollars. So again, a lot of money that goes to the Wall Street banks for them to turn around and use as they will. But what about those of us that don't have an annual fee card and don't have a debt? Well, why is this important to us? Well, it's the third segment that is relevant to us, and that is the transaction fee. So I'm going to use the number 3%. I think you're aware that when you use your credit card, let's say you go to a restaurant and you have a $100 tab, that restaurant is only going to get, in this example, $97. The other $3, 3%, is going to go back to the bank that issued the credit card. So if I had a bank card, let's say, let's take a look at this Evergreen card. Excuse me. This Evergreen card that is issued by First National Bank of Omaha. So it's branded by First National Bank of Omaha is the Evergreen card, and it's also issued by First National Bank of Omaha. So that 3%, they would give back, in this case, 2% to me for using the card. That's nice. That's cash back. And the other 1% they keep. Now, with that 1%, some of it is being used to cover the overhead of the card, but most of it's going back into that same pool of money that they would use for the annual fee or for the user fees. Just a little footnote, the Evergreen card does not have an annual fee. So what we want to look at here is what happens with that money and how can you avoid, let's say you had a Citibank or a Chase or a Wells Fargo or any of the Wall Street banks, and you don't want to see that percentage going off to a fossil fuel bank. You'd rather see it go to a bank that is not involved in investing in fossil fuels. So what we want to draw attention to is the TCM, the First National Bank of Omaha, Beneficial State Bank, or if you're a credit union, CUNA. Now, First National Bank of Omaha is a brick and mortar bank that's in Omaha. Beneficial State Bank is a brick and mortar bank that's out on the West Coast, primarily in Northern California, but also Oregon and Washington. TCM is not a brick and mortar bank. It is a bank that exists for the sole purposes of issuing a credit card. CUNA over here also is not a brick and mortar credit union. It exists for the sole purposes of issuing credit cards for other credit unions. So I've used this word a few times, issuing, and I've also used the word branding. Let's talk about those two words. It's very important. So here you have a card that's branded as Evergreen, which is a First National Bank of Omaha card, and it's issued. So this bank is branding and issuing their own card. But down here, let's look at Amalgamated. Amalgamated does not issue their own card. It's branded for their customers, but it's not issued by them. They decided just not to get into all the overhead and that part of a business. So they literally farm out the issuing of the card. So let's go back to that 3% that we talked about. Here, out of the 3%, 0.5% goes back to Amalgamated for branding the card. 1.5% would go as cash back to the consumer, and the remaining 1% would go to, in this case, First National Bank of Omaha, because they are the ones that are issuing the card. Some of you might be familiar with these things that we call affinity cards. We're using this one here from our friends at Green America, and they put their card out there for the purposes of fundraising. So every time somebody uses the Green America card, let's go back to that 3%, 0.5% goes to Green America for branding the card. Another 1% goes back to the consumer. That leaves 1.5% that actually in this case goes to TCM. Remember TCM up here? They're the ones that are issuing the card. Green America is branding the card. If you had a Sierra Club card, it would be the same thing. It's an affinity card. 0.5% donation would go to Sierra Club, and the bank that issues it is this Beneficial State Bank up here. You can read here on your own caution. There are some what we think to be good organizations, but they're still having their cards issued by fossil fuel banks. Want to quickly just mention something about store cards, like Lowe's, Verizon, Sam's, and some Amazon cards. One Amazon store card is issued by Citibank. Their others are issued by Community. Now you see here I have Synchrony and Community. You can click on Community for a link. These are two banks. They are not brick and mortar banks. They're just like TCM up here. TCM issues cards for banks and not for profits. Community and Synchrony issue store cards for these other organizations. So if you had a Verizon card and you took a look at it, it would say Community on the back. So these would be considered to be, shall we call them, fossil-free credit cards or store cards in this case. Now, before I go into the discussion here, I mentioned nothing about American Express. American Express is not in the fossil fuel business. Their whole business model is based on the transaction of cash. They charge much more than 3% every time you use it. That's why a lot of stores won't take it. And they also have annual fees. So they make a lot of money in the credit card business and in the banking business. They're not out there taking their money and investing it in fossil fuels. Now, there might be a lot of other reasons that people don't use American Express, such as their fees, but also maybe they just don't want to do business with big American Express. But if your simple objective is to avoid investing in fossil fuel or seeing your money go to fossil fuel, American Express card would not be a problem. So I'm going to take a little pause there and actually come off share and just take some questions that you might have on credit cards and banks.
Okay, we have a question from the house. The difference between MasterCard and Visa, can you talk about that?
Well, those are both transaction services. Actually, there's no difference between MasterCard and Visa. In fact, the banks that they service are also the banks that own them. But it's just a transaction. So when you turn your card over and it says Visa or MasterCard or Diners or the like, that's not a concern. It's just a transaction part.
There's a question in the chat. Is your website updated regularly with changes to the data?
Yes. Now with the banks, of course, that reference is coming from Mighty Deposits or the other search engines. There is no system out there for doing your research on credit cards. Now, one thing that I left out on the issuing and the branding, I should say that backwards, the branding and the issuing. Let's go with KeyBank. You're familiar with KeyBank. If you were to look at a KeyBank card and turn it over, you won't see TCM or Citi or Chase or any other reference. It's because KeyBank issues their own card. So if you go to a credit union and you don't see Kuna or some other reference, that credit union is issuing their own card. If you go to a community bank and you turn it over and it says nothing, that community bank is issuing their own card. So you've solved your problem. If you don't want to have a card where your transaction money is going to a fossil fuel bank, go to a community bank that issues their own card. It's done. Otherwise, you need to look for TCM, First National Bank of Omaha, Beneficial. Those are the alternatives right now. Other questions?
Okay, what's your question, Debs?
Well, that's on the back, that's what's on the back of my credit card.
Okay, she has,
I have a Visa, through the, a co-op.
Genesee Co-op, that's our local credit union.
Yeah. But it's a debit card. It's not a credit card.
Okay.
And what it says on the back is NYCE, and then there's a plus, and then there's a co-op.
Right. And those are all good things. Now, a debit card, all debit cards that are issued by a local bank are going to be fossil free because they're just basically plastic checks. They're not credit cards. So even a debit card from Citi or Chase is not a credit card, but yet you're still doing business with Citi and Chase. And all those things plus and the like, they are just systems so that if you were out of state and you went to a credit union in Salt Lake City, let's say, they would recognize your debit card and you wouldn't have a transaction fee because they're part of the plus system or one of those other logos that you have on the back of your card. So debit cards, no worry.
Jim Hooper has his hand up. Jim, you're muted.
I took it down, but maybe you could just go through again what's the smoothest way on your website to get to the credit card links that you spent most of your time on? I think it's under personal banking, is that right? And there's some choices there.
Yeah, we'll go back to the share screen. Whoops, let me get there. Jim, are you talking about how do we find this page in general?
Well, I've been able to find that. I just wanted a reminder as to which areas you spent the most time on credit cards on this page.
Okay, well, so first of all, you have number 1, personal banking, and now you have
Yes.
number 2, credit cards.
Right.
And this, where you want to do your search is your read all about it here from our friends at Green America. In fact, here you have the best green cards of 2022. I think this has been updated to 2023. I need to change that button. But we spent time talking in this category and this category. Now, I can recommend banks, I can recommend credit cards, and I can recommend home and auto insurance companies, but I can't recommend investment portfolios. I do recommend the Evergreen card. If you can get this card, it is a 2% cashback card, and the customer service is excellent. This card from Beneficial State Bank is not available in New York State. Now, I personally have the amalgamated card that is issued by First National Bank of Omaha. More information that you might want, but if you were to apply for the Evergreen card and they rejected you, it's probably because they're issuing another card like amalgamated in a bank in your zip code. So in my neighborhood, we have a community bank which is based in Syracuse. They also use FMBO. So FMBO will not give me a credit card issued by them under their brand. So I go down to Amalgamated Bank in New York City. This is a really well appreciated progressive green bank that was founded by labor unions several decades ago. And I get a First National Bank of Omaha card from Amalgamated. So you can click here and go to their website, or you can click here and go to their website. But also I encourage you to go to your community bank, and if they issue their own credit card, use them.
Thank you very much.
Let's move on to home and auto insurance, because I see here we're coming up to 15 minutes after the hour. On the home and auto insurance, now, who would have thought that this was going to be an issue? I always thought that I was getting my home and auto insurance from a home and auto insurance company. And I don't mean to be glib here, but we're getting it from a fossil fuel insurance company. Just like the big Wall Street banks exist for providing complex banking services to Wall Street companies, that's what they do. Well, insurance companies do what they do. They insure things, and they really like things that are high risk, because that comes with high premiums. And if your actuaries are doing a good job, it comes with high profits. So the insurance companies, Allstate, Chubb, Farmers, which is owned by Zurich, Geico, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, that's Warren Buffett, Liberty Mutual, even Progressive, all of these companies are insuring fossil fuel projects. Now, how does this work? When a fossil fuel company, let's say a company wants to build a new oil refinery, or they want to make a new pipeline, they go out and raise capital. They do not use their working capital. They go out and they buy loans. They issue debt. So there's three ways in which they can go to the money market. They either go to the banks for loans, they go to the private and public equity investors and get investments, or they go to governments to get grants. Those are the three ways in which they get money. None of those sectors will give them any money, not a dime, unless it's insured. And of course, the reason is that there's very high risk in all of these endeavors. Think the BP oil platform, the Exxon Valdez tanker, the Peruvian pipeline. All of them, when they went bad in a really big way. So no insurance, no loan, no insurance, no investment money. Same thing for a grant. So what a wonderful industry to be in. These fossil fuel companies come to these insurance companies and they say, I've got to have insurance. And they have a very competitive market out there because all of these companies are interested in doing business with them. Liberty Mutual, that's the Inu that puts his head in the sand at the volleyball games on TV. Liberty Mutual is the largest insurer of fossil fuel projects in the world. If they were, well, I'll save this for later. So this is about the insuring, but what about the investing? Not only are they insuring fossil fuel projects, but all those premiums that are paid, the premiums that are paid by you and me on our home and auto, the premiums that are being paid by the arena where the basketball game is played, by the hospital, by the fossil fuel company, all those premiums are then turned around and invested. So unlike a bank where that is our money, it's more like a credit card. Once I buy the premium, I've spent my money, but it's no longer my money. And the insurance company that now has that money gets to invest those premiums as they wish. So what to do? Like the banks, if I don't want to see my premium dollars going off to fund an industry that does not align with my values, I leave Chase, I leave Citi, I leave Wells Fargo. Well, here I leave Liberty Mutual, I leave Travelers, I leave Allstate. You go to a small regional insurance company. Leave the big banks, go to a community bank or a credit union. Leave the big insurance companies, go to a small regional insurance company.
Michael, we have a question. What about AAA insurance?
AAA is actually, AAA is not its own insurance. It is a shell for other insurance. They then go out and get other insurance companies to underwrite them. So if you were with AAA, you would not be in a major insurer and investor in fossil fuels, but you would not be able to say, I'm free from it. So you may want to do some shopping around here on your AAA. But let's talk about how we go do our shopping. Most of the alternatives in New York State, every state's going to have an alternative. And in New York State, I've listed just 4 here, but these are the 4 that are most commonly referenced. And interestingly, all of them had their origins out around Cooperstown in central New York, around the Utica area. So there's New York Central Mutual, that's just commonly called NYCM, Utica Mutual, Preferred Mutual, and here is a cooperative. Mutuals are like credit unions. The premium depositors, or the premium payers, I should say, own the insurance company. Now you would say, that's good, this is like a credit union. But also be careful because Liberty Mutual, the #1 insurer and investor in fossil fuels, is also a mutual. Now what's interesting here, they are out insuring fossil fuel companies. So if the premium payer actually owns the company, then it's the fossil fuel companies that actually own Liberty Mutual. Interesting little circle. But wouldn't you rather be in a game where your premium is going into investments that are in your community? And that's exactly what you get with these. You can do your own research. I happen to have my insurance with Utica Mutual. My partner, Joanne, she has her insurance with NYCM. We did our own research. We actually talked to them and asked them about where are our premiums being invested? And since it's a mutual, we own that company, and therefore they give us the information. So unlike Geico, where it's 15 minutes or less, or where you can call up Flo at Progressive, you have to go to an independent insurance agent and ask them for quotes on these alternatives. Some agents will offer all of them plus more, and some will only offer one or two. Most all agents offer all of the big ones. Now, as you know, State Farm, you have to go to a State Farm building. Farmers, you have to go, in most cases, to a farmer's agent. Sometimes independent will have them. Of course, Geico, that's on the telephone. One thing I want to say about all these companies very, very quickly is that when you see their advertisements on television, do you notice that they don't say anything about their product? If they say anything at all, it's you can get a quote in 15 minutes or less, or if you bundle, you can save more, but we all knew that. They don't tell you anything. What they do is they sell you 30 seconds, 20 seconds of entertainment. The cute little lizard, the Inu playing volleyball, Flo telling you a little story, the guy from Farmers being neighborly. They don't really say anything about the insurance product itself because all the products are the same. It's car insurance, it's home insurance. What they're doing is they're entertaining you so that you like their brand, so that they can then put this into their big risk pool that underwrites all their other risk. Now, some of the other risks that they have are good. They're hospitals, they're arenas, they're things that we value, but they're also fossil fuel, prisons, weapons, firearms, things that don't necessarily align with our value. For more on this, I would suggest going over here to Rainforest Action Network and reading all about it. And the source of all sources is Insure Our Future. Read all about it. So I need to kind of move along quickly if we're going to get into our retirement section. But let's take a question or two if somebody has it on insurance.
Someone asked about AARP, but they said it's through the Hartford, which is on your list.
Yes. And when we do our research, when somebody calls me up afterwards, one of the first things we do is we just go into the browser, let's say Amica. Somebody wants to know what I think about Amica insurance. And so I'll say, okay, go up to your browser and type in who owns Amica. And that's where, if you did that with AARP, you quickly find out that it was the Hartford that does it.
The other question, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The other question is, what about a credit card that's financed by a financial security organization such as Fidelity?
Well, on the credit cards here again, you want to see who's issuing the card. I don't think Fidelity issues the card. If you have a card with you, turn it over and see what it says. There's two ways you know who issues your card. It either says something on the back, or it's who you write your monthly check to. So, for example, I have that Amalgamated card. I never write a check to Amalgamated. Every month I write the check to First National Bank of Omaha. And if I have a problem with my card, I don't call Amalgamated, I call First National Bank of Omaha. Now, if you're doing that through KeyBank, you know the KeyBank issues your card. So on the Fidelity, Elan Financials, Elan Financial Services is owned by US Bank. And so that would not, US Bank is one of the major financiers of fossil fuel projects.
Just the Discover card.
Discover card is like American Express. They're not in the business of making their money by investing in those type of things. They make their money off the transactions. Now, as you know, Discover and Diners are they own each other. So if you have a Diners Club or a Discover card, you'd be like American Express. You could consider that to be a green card. Ready to jump into retirement? A lot of information. It's fairly fast paced, so I apologize for this. Just a quick aside as we scroll, some organizations, we come in and we do a 1 hour presentation on these first 3, and then we come back another day, weeks, months later, and we do another hour on retirement investments. So if you have a greater appetite for what we're going to take a peek at right here, maybe some months from now, weeks from now, we could revisit these things. But here on your retirement investments, this is much more like the bank in that it's your money. With the credit cards, you were spending money that caused things to happen in a certain way that don't align with your values. When you buy your auto and home insurance, again, you're spending money that's now going to be used in a way that you don't want it to be used. And so we need to find some alternatives to that. But with your retirement investments, or even your growth investments, this is your money. And you want to see that it's being used in a way that aligns with your values. And what we do here is, in most cases, we use asset managers. We use financial advisors and asset managers to manage and invest our money. And some of the larger ones are using it in a way that it is putting our money to industries and businesses that do not align with our values, whether that be fossil fuels, tobacco, weapons, firearms, prisons, whatever it might be. So what we recommend is over here on Stop the Money Pipeline, fossil fuel, frequently asked questions. This is an excellent source of information about the big ones, the BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Capital Group. You've heard of them. We're going to spend a few moments here on As You Sow. This is a search engine much like Mighty Deposits. Nice little tool. And then, of course, to read more about things on steps to divest and reinvest and find fossil-free investments, we're back over here to our friends at Green America. I do want to accent or draw your attention to this bottom. Rivers and Mountains GreenFaith is not an investment or financial advisor or any other kind of advisor and does not make any claim on these investments. Now, again, I can make strong investments on insurance companies, credit cards, and banks, but not here. What I can do is recommend certain financial advisors and tell you that if you have questions, go to your financial advisor. So what ends up happening here, if I could take 2 minutes to tell a very simple story to make my point, and it is a very simple story. So how does this all work? I like to use the story of I am a consumer and I have no time to do any research whatsoever on what to buy or not buy on Consumer Reports or B Corporation or Wirecutter or any of those places. I just don't have the time. But my neighbor, Mr. Jones, he's amazing. He does all this research. He's incredible. He always buys the best with the longest reliability and durability. He's just amazing. So gee, if I just bought what Mr. Jones buys, and I sell whatever Mr. Jones sells, I don't have to worry about things because he's going to do it right. So what I do is I go out and I hire somebody, and we're going to call that somebody Mr. Fink. And Mr. Fink is going to manage my money, and he's going to buy whatever Mr. Jones buys. So when Mr. Jones buys a gray all-electric Volkswagen, I want Mr. Fink to buy the same thing. And it better not be white, because I know there's a reason he got that Mr. Jones got gray. And the same thing for the Samsung or the Sony, or if he sells a snowblower, I want Mr. Fink to buy and sell whatever Mr. Jones buys and sells. So here I am the consumer. We could call that the investor. Mr. Fink is my asset manager. He's going to manage my money. And Mr. Jones is called my index. Now, in the financial world, Mr. Jones is called Dow Jones, and Mr. Fink is called Stanley Fink, and he is the CEO of BlackRock, an asset management company. And that's basically how much of our mutual funds and exchange-traded funds are managed. They're managed by asset managers that are following an index. So let's go take a little bit of a look at what this is. Now, again, this is on mutual funds and exchange traded funds. If you have stocks, there you know exactly what you're doing. If you wanted to put your money into a green company, go buy a green company stock. You know exactly what it's doing. If you want to put your money into something that is involved in water, go buy a company that's in waterworks. So stock investment is direct. But here we're going to go look at the mutual funds and the ETFs. Now, very quickly, I'm just going to show you how to use this tool. This is fossil-free funds. It's put together by As You Sow, a not-for-profit. It was put together by Green Financial Advisors and Green Asset Managers. It's been around here, as you see, for 30 years. I know some financial advisors. In fact, my financial advisor actually uses this tool. He uses a few other tools too. There's 4 tools he uses, but this is one of the 4 tools that he uses. None of the data that comes in here is proprietary. It's all coming from SEC and other regulatory agencies. And it gets fed into, let's say, if you went to Morgan Stanley, they have a feed that comes into theirs. Bloomberg, they have a feed that comes into theirs. This is a feed that comes into the folks at As You Sow, and this is the product that they've developed for us. I'm going to encourage you to go up here and click on Menu. And over here under Menu, Video Tutorials. Don't be alarmed. Just go look at the An Introduction. If you have time for these others, fine. But the time you spend on An Introduction is going to be worth every minute of it as you go through and you start to navigate the rest of this. Also, this is just on fossil fuels, but you can also do it on deforestation, weapons, and a few others by clicking on these buttons. But with time being short, let's go back here. These are 401ks, retirement plans, and personal portfolios. So in my case, I have a personal portfolio. And I can search by funds by name, ticker, or manager. No better search than by ticker, because that way you know you're looking at the exact correct fund. Let's take a little look at what a fund might look like. Does someone in the audience want to give me an asset manager or a fund's name or a ticker number?
All right, someone in the audience said Savos, S-A-V-O-S.
VTI.
Yeah, that's, I don't know what Savos is actually. I'd have to look that up.
VTI.
And VPI is?
VT. T as in Tom.
VTI.
Yes.
Okay. So here they have a very limited portfolio of 1, 2, 3, 4,
It's the
5.
total stock market. It's total stock. Vanguard
Right.
total stock. Yeah.
Right here.
Yes.
This is a good example for me to be using. So here's what you would find if you tapped in Jackson National or Vanguard or Trillium or any of the other asset managers. So here you have Vanguard Target Retirement. There are several here that are Vanguard. So Vanguard is the asset manager. And then they're using certain indexes out there to follow the market. So what we find right here by looking at it is that they do invest in fossil fuels. They do not have a sustainability mandate. Now you need to click and read about what this means. We find out whether or not they have investments in fossil fuel banks or if they have investment in fossil fuel insurance. And remember what we talked about in the beginning, from doing harm to no harm, but you want to see your investments actually going to do good. We have the Clean 200. So here on that market that you looked at right here, you can see that it is heavily invested. Well, 9% is heavy in fossil fuels. It's investing in quite a few fossil fuel banks, also fossil fuel insurance, but it actually is investing fairly heavily in clean energy. Anything over 10% is worth looking at, and rarely do you find anything over 25%. So a low number here does not mean bad. You just want to see it somewhere around the 15 to 25% range. Okay, so it's not just what's going on here. You want to see what's going on with performance. Now we look here that this is a very well-performing stock. It's at or better than the market. The Standard & Poor's 500 operates roughly around 10% for the past several decades, these past 3 decades. And you see here that it's operating at, slightly above or slightly below the market. Can't be better than that. We can ignore the 1 year because, you know, everybody did really bad, or if you had a lot of fossil fuel, you did really good. You also want to be careful about the 3 year, because here again, 2-3 years ago, everybody was doing good. Your financial advisor is going to want to look out here. So a financial advisor would be happy at the performance on this one. But let's go back and find out a little bit more about what's going on with that fund. And this is just where this website is invaluable. That it gets an F rating because it has $114 billion going into the fossil fuel industry. It has 211 stocks making up that. And you can actually go here and find out exactly where those investments are going. So let's pick on coal. It's going to show you where those 26 holdings are. Now, sometimes this company that's getting quite a bit of money, $2 billion, Air Products and Chemicals is not directly involved in the extraction of coal. It's there for providing the products that help the company take the coal out of the mine. Dominion, you're actually investing in the coal. And that's why you see a little coal wagon right here. Actually, here they have a coal wagon, but again, it's not that type of service. But again, being aware of time, we want to go back here and see where some of these other holdings are. Just click back here. And you can see here, if we wanted to look at gas and oil industry, it gives us the complete list. On banks and insurers, it gives us the list and how much money they're putting into the fossil fuel banks. On the insurance companies, down below, here we are, Berkshire Hathaway, again, the largest insurer of tar sand projects in Alberta. Chubb, some of the other Travelers, number 4. Here's the Hartford again. But remember, they were also doing some good investments. So we click on the Clean 200, and just like we could do our research on what's going on with the oil, gas, and other companies, we can do our research. 41 holdings in clean energy. When you have a moment, go read about what the Clean 200 is all about and how they come about their index. And here you can see the companies that they're investing in: technology, communication, healthcare, some real estate. Now, real estate, healthcare, and most technology, by their very nature, are not fossil fuel. So if a company were to have a lot of healthcare, real estate, or technology, they're going to be fossil free, but they're not necessarily out there having the diversity that you're looking at. This portfolio is very diverse. Financial services, basic materials across the line, First Solar, Beatrice Healthcare. So you can see that even though this company is doing quite a bit of heavy investment in fossil fuels, fossil fuel banks, fossil fuel insurance companies, it's also doing quite a bit of investing in the Clean 200. So I'm glad you brought up that particular fund. That really showed us a whole lot about how this website gets used. Here, just in our last couple of minutes, well, let me back up so you see, I did that rather quickly, I apologize. So we came over here to the search tool, and I want to find out some top rated funds. Just like with Mighty Deposits, just show me the green banks. I don't need to see the other banks. Show me the green companies. And you can see here that there's a long list. You have to click and click some more, keep going. But they're highlighting these companies that are all fossil fuel. They have this sustainability mandate from US SIF, and you could go read about who they are. They're not into fossil banks, they're not into fossil insurance, and they have most of them pretty good ratings here on the Clean 200, some of them not. But of course, all of them, you want to check out the performance. And so right away, you can go to this Amana. It's got a cost ratio that's a little high. I'd rather see something in the 5 and 6 range. Here it's 0.9%. But look, it's got some good performance over time. I might be interested in checking this fund out or having my financial advisor do it. There's a couple of companies in here that I really like. My financial advisor won't let me look at because it doesn't have a history. Companies that I like Trillium here, performing very, very well over the years. It's got a rather heavy cost at 1%, but this is a company that I would look at, 1919 and the like. But as we're looking at, I know that your facility there closes at 8 o'clock. So I want to kind of come off here and allow us to ask a few questions and wrap up.
Eileen has a question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael, for all this good information. And I'm really glad that you highlighted Vanguard. I'm part of a global campaign that's actually pressuring Vanguard to change the way it does business so that it will reduce the amount. You know, it is one of the top 2 investors in fossil fuels, as you were kind of being able to see from that. But it also does not use its shareholder voting power to push companies in the direction that it could be, which is an extra dynamic with asset managers. My question is, so our group has not asked people to move money prior to now, but we're about to, but we want to do it in a way that actually increases pressure on the company. So we're going to ask people to tell us that they're moving their money and try and do it publicly. And I'm curious, in all the different efforts that you're talking about, like getting out of banks, getting out of insurance companies, is there any place where, because, you know, I want to change where my credit cards are, my bank's pretty good, but is there any place where I can let them know that's why I'm changing it so that it actually has some impact on the company and so that organizations can add up, this is how many millions or billions we've moved out of these corporations because of climate change?
The quick answer is yes. Just like Third Act has had this campaign for the past 14 months directed at cutting up the credit cards and moving away from the Wall Street banks. And of course, 3/21/23 is the day where we're moving away from what we call the inside game. That's what you folks are doing down there in Pennsylvania. And we're going to the, what I call, get me the heck out of here game. Now, the inside game, don't get me wrong, it is strategic and it works. It's where you stay inside and you keep on putting pressure on the companies by voting at the annual meetings. And again, I don't want to be dismissive of it at all. It's very noble. It's not my game. I don't care if they get as green as they can possibly get. I don't want to do business with them. There are alternatives out there where before there might have been 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Now there are 40 or 50. I want to bring one, the reason I brought this screen back up is Bosox here. It gets a D rating by fossil-free funds. And we've been talking to them about this. I know an asset manager and a financial advisor in New York City that this is their default fund, not Vanguard, but Boston Trust, Bosox. And the reason for it is that these investments that they have over here, they are actually in there voting and moving these companies. They're doing impact investing. And that's what you're talking about, Eileen, impact investing. So even though they get a D, they are aggressively going in there and turning this whole portfolio around to where Cactus and these companies are now out there actually moving into the green, clean energy field. So I want to go back to show one other field here. I know I only have some minutes. On the Green America Fund, this is our friend Fran Teplitz. Find fossil-free investments. It's not the most user-friendly screen here because you have panel, panel, panel. My story about me, Mr. Fink, and Mr. Jones, here's me, except for I have a financial planner and advisor that's going to help me. Smart. Here's Mr. Fink, he's my asset manager. And here's Mr. Jones, where I'm going for my funds. Let's click on Mr. Jones here. These are broad-based mutual funds that exclude fossil fuel companies by policy. A footnote, it doesn't say exclude fossil fuel banks. It doesn't say exclude fossil fuel insurance. It's fossil fuel companies. And here you'll see some names you recognize. Most of all, Parnassus, one of my favorites, Trillium. These folks are big time on impact investing. They are leading some of the lawsuits that are directed at ESG investing, where, of course, some of the states are trying to dampen that down, and PACs. So long-winded answer to your question, they're out there. They've been around for a long time. There are some other companies that are popping up. Beware, beware. Look at their track record. Talk to other people that are doing this stuff, get their criticism and their praise. A lot of folks that don't have a lot of money, take a good look at the Green Century funds. Green Century funds are managed by Trillium, by the way. So if we were to spend more time in a workshop, I would come back to this page and we'd spend some time there. But also on your asset management firms, these are the folks that are going to manage your money. Here's Amalgamated, Calvert, that Bosox that we talked about, Boston Common, Horizon. They're all been out there for a good number of years. Eileen, glad to talk to you at another time. If I have 2 minutes to do a plug. On April 28th, we're having an invitational forum for people directly involved in the endowments held by faith-based organizations. And what we're doing is we're showing them exactly what we are doing here on how to move your money as an individual or a small organization. Now we're looking at how to move the money that is held by an endowment or another major investment. This is being done by 2 financial advisors who are 3 decades green advisors. This one on April 28th is beta 2.0. From there, we hope to be able to go nationwide under the auspice of Stop the Money Pipeline, Third Act, and GreenFaith. So Eileen, we're going to be looking exactly at what you just talked about. It's time to leave Vanguard, Fidelity, BlackRock, State Street, and Capital One, or Capital Group. I misspoke.
Thank you
Do
so
you have
much.
a question? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michael. We really have to end. I know there are more questions, but I believe you said at the beginning that anyone could call you at any time and ask you a question. So do you want to share your phone number one more time for us?
Here's the website.
Is it on the website?
Well, it's this one right here, but then here's my phone number.
Awesome. You're the best.
We have a lot of work to do.
Okay, it's 845-489-5959. I have it if anyone needs it. Thank you so much. That was so helpful and so informative. And I'm sure we're all excited to learn more.
Well, again, much of this workshop is to show you what's out there. Get on the web, do your research.